Picture this. You are sitting at your desk, and it is the absolute dead of a Michigan February.
Oh man, I know that feeling.
Right. You know the exact kind of day I'm talking about. The sky has been that flat, just unrelenting, depressing gray for what feels like 3 straight months.
Yeah, it's brutal.
The temperature is hovering right around 19 degrees. The salt on the roads is actively eating the undercarriage of your fleet. And if you are running a seasonal service business, let's say landscaping or exterior painting.
Hardscaping, yeah.
Exactly. You are sitting right in the middle of what we in the industry call the gap.
The gap. It's just an incredibly stressful place to be.
It's agonizing. It's that terrifying stretch of time between, the last reliable snow removal invoice that came in and the first really lucrative spring cleanup that you were just desperately waiting for.
Just staring at the calendar.
Exactly. You look out the window, the trucks are parked, they aren't moving. Your guys are texting you, asking for hours because they have rent to pay.
And that's when the real panic hits.
Yeah. Yeah, because most terrifyingly of all, the phone has gone completely dead silent. So panic sets in. You look at your payroll spreadsheet, you look at the equipment loans for those beautiful new trucks.
And those loans absolutely do not care what season it is.
You really don't. So a very specific, almost primal instinct kicks in. You lean back in your desk chair, you stare at the ceiling tiles, and you say the magic words out loud. I need to hire a marketing agency.
It is the universal distress signal of the service business owner. It really is. It's the big red panic button on the desk.
Yeah.
Because when the revenue stalls out or the phone stops ringing for even a few days, the immediate knee-jerk reaction across the entire industry is that, well, we need more eyeballs.
We need more clicks.
Exactly. We need to dominate local search. We need more people in this town to know we exist.
And that brings us to the core mission of our deep dive today. Because we are going to expose what is arguably the most expensive, most exhausting myth in the entire service business industry.
I love this topic. It's so needed.
It is, because that myth is the deeply ingrained belief that when revenue stalls or when the schedule looks light, the answer is always invariably more marketing.
Right.
We're going to completely tear down that idea today, piece by piece. Because as you and I both know from spending, years in the trenches, looking under the hood of hundreds of these businesses.
Thousands, really.
Yeah, throwing marketing dollars at a stalled business is usually like throwing gasoline on a grease fire.
It truly is. It just accelerates the burn. And the core thesis we need to establish right out of the gate here, the thing you have to understand before you spend another dime on Facebook ads or SEO is this.
Lay it on them.
Most service businesses out there, the plumbers, the HVAC companies, the roofers, the landscapers, they do not actually have a marketing problem.
Wait, really? What do they have then?
What they have is an operations problem that is brilliantly disguised as a marketing problem.
Ah, disguise.
Yes, and because it's wearing a marketing disguise, because it looks like a lack of leads, owners throw marketing solutions at it.
Which I'm guessing doesn't work.
No, it ironically only makes the underlying operational fractures so much worse.
Okay, let's unpack this, because I know you have a very specific lens on this. You didn't start out in the service business sector. You came from a totally different world, right?
Yeah, I did. I actually spent 25 years in healthcare before transitioning into business systems and profit advisory.
Wow, quite the pivot.
It was. But that healthcare background fundamentally shapes how I look at a business ecosystem. Because in medicine, the cardinal rule, the absolute bedrock of patient care, is that you cannot just treat symptoms.
Right, you have to find the actual issue.
Exactly. You have to do the rigorous diagnostic work to find the root cause. If a patient comes into the emergency room with a severe blinding headache, you don't just hand them a massive horse pill dose of ibuprofen, pat them on the back, and send them home.
Because the headache could be anything.
Right. The headache is just a symptom. It's an indicator light on the dashboard. The root cause could be severe dehydration, it could be a sudden vision issue, or it could be a life-threatening aneurysm. You have to find the root cause or the patient dies.
That makes total sense. So how does that map to the service businesses we're talking about?
Well, in the business world, when an owner sits across the table from me, totally exhausted, and says, I need more calls, or I need more leads to keep my guys busy.
You put the doctor hat on.
I immediately put my doctor hat on. Because I need more calls is a symptom. It is the headache.
Right.
And if you just treat that symptom by writing a $5,000 check to a digital marketing agency without actually looking at the underlying health of the business, you are committing business malpractice.
I love that phrase, business malpractice.
Mhm.
But okay, I have to push back a little here because I can hear you, the listener, practically screaming at your dashboard right now.
Go for it.
Wait a second. Isn't getting your name out there inherently a good thing? I mean, brand awareness, market penetration, dominating your zip code, these are real things, right?
So they're real.
So if you have a solid service, if your guys do good work, why is turning up the volume? Why is getting more leads a bad thing? How in the world can more business be bad for business?
That is the logical assumption, right? But what's fascinating here is that the data completely undeniably contradicts the assumption that more top-line revenue automatically equals a healthier business.
Really?
Yeah, if we look at the historical data from the U.S. Small Business Administration, the statistics are incredibly sobering. Roughly half of all small businesses do not survive past the 5-year mark.
50% just gone.
50% of them vanish. And when you dig into the autopsy reports of those failed businesses, when you really look at why the doors closed, the biggest culprit isn't a lack of marketing.
It's not that people didn't know they existed.
Exactly. It is the widening, fatal gap between revenue and profit.
Uh-huh.
What happens is that an owner focuses entirely on building top-line revenue. They get the leads, they book the jobs, the trucks are rolling everywhere. But they are building that massive revenue on a broken operational foundation.
So they're busy, but they're not making money.
Exactly. The costs to actually fulfill those jobs outweigh the margins. The inefficiencies, the guys driving back and forth to the supply house 3 times a day, the unbilled hours, the massive equipment repair bills from poor maintenance, it just eats all the cash flow.
Right, so the owner's working harder, doing more jobs, generating massive gross revenue.
But the actual take-home profit is shrinking. And eventually, that broken foundation will completely crush the business under its own weight.
It is the illusion of success. You look huge on paper. Your logo is on a dozen wrap trucks. Your guys are working overtime. Your neighbors think you are absolutely killing it.
But your actual bank account is practically coughing dust.
Exactly. You are cash poor and exhausted, which leads perfectly into a specific industry observation I want to share with you. I want to talk about an owner we'll call Mike.
Oh, I know we've both met a lot of Mikes.
So many Mikes. This is a classic tragedy of a successful failure, and I guarantee you, the listener, know a Mike.
Let's hear his numbers.
So Mike runs a residential home services company. He is a hard worker, an absolute grinder. He's doing about $850,000 a year in top-line revenue.
Okay, solid size.
Right, but he is working 65 hours a week just to keep the wheels on the bus, and his profit margin has been chronically stuck at a measly 9%.
Ouch.
Yeah. So out of that 850 grand in revenue that flows through his hands every year, he's barely keeping $76,000 for his family.
And let's be clear, a 9% net margin in home services is dangerously thin. It leaves absolutely no room for error.
None at all.
One blown transmission on a work truck.
Yeah.
One unusually rainy season where you can't work for 2 weeks. One bad hire who wrecks a piece of expensive equipment, and that 9% evaporates entirely into negative territory.
You are effectively operating on the edge of a cliff.
You really are.
Yeah.
So what does Mike do? He feels the pain of that 65-hour work week. He looks at his anemic bank account, and he reaches for the antacid instead of fixing the heart condition.
He hires a marketing agency.
Of course he does.
He does. And here is the kicker, the part that always trips people up. The agency is actually good.
Oh, really?
Yeah, they aren't stammers. They don't take his money and run. They do exactly what they're hired to do. They rebuild the website so it looks beautiful. They run the local SEO. So he ranks #1 for his core services. They launch highly targeted ads.
Okay, so let's break down the exact math of Mike's big marketing win, because this is where the mirage becomes devastatingly clear.
Let's do it.
The agency does their job flawlessly. Mike's inbound calls go from 25 a month up to 40 a month.
That's a huge jump.
It is. That is a massive, highly successful increase in lead volume. And because he has more swings at the plate, his closed, paying customers go from 8 a month to 13 a month.
Okay, so more jobs on the schedule.
Exactly. And at the end of the year, his top-line revenue has grown by a highly respectable 24%. He actually crosses the $1 million mark.
So from the outside looking in, Mike is an absolute titan. He's crushing it. The agency is probably putting his logo on their case study page as their shining success story, right?
Oh, without a doubt. But then you pull back the curtain and look at the actual operations. You look at what it took to get that revenue.
And it's not pretty.
No. The gut punch reality check is staggering. Remember, his operational foundation was already cracked before he hired the agency. His team wasn't efficient. His routing was terrible. His guys were driving 30 minutes across town and passing each other on the highway.
Oh man, the windshield time.
Exactly. And his pricing was outdated. He hadn't raised his rates in 3 years because he was scared of losing clients.
So to service these brand new customers, he was bleeding cash on every single job.
Yes. When we actually ran the numbers, every new customer he brought on cost him $525 in direct labor, materials, and fully burdened overhead just to serve.
And what was his average job size?
His average job size was only $850.
Wow. So by the time you factor in his fixed overhead, the rent for the shop, the insurance, the administrative salaries, his actual true profit per customer was sitting at just $76.
$76 of profit on an $850 job. That margin is practically microscopic. It's fragile.
So what was the final tally for the year?
Let's look at the final year-end tally of this massive marketing success story. Mike added $22,000 in annual marketing costs to pay the agency retainer and fund the ad spend.
Right.
And because he suddenly had 24% more jobs to fulfill with his broken, inefficient systems, he ended up working 15 more hours every single week.
Just putting out fires.
Exactly. Doing quality control, answering emergency calls, putting out fires. He went from a 65-hour week to an 80-hour week.
80 hours.
Yeah. And after all that, after the thousands in ads, the extra hours away from his family, the immense stress, the extra wear and tear on his fleet, his total net profit only grew by $14,500 for the entire year.
Oh my God. So what does this all mean? Let's do the painful math on that. I really want you, the listener, to visualize this. He worked 15 extra hours a week for 52 weeks.
That is 780 extra hours.
780 hours of his life gone. Hours he will never get back. For $14,500 in additional profit.
It hurts to even hear it.
It means Mike made exactly $9.66 an hour for his extra work.
Unbelievable.
A grown man running a company with over $1 million in revenue, taking on all the risk, carrying all the liability, dealing with all the employee headaches, and he is paying himself $9.66 an hour for the privilege of working himself to death.
It is heartbreaking. And the tragedy is it is incredibly common. The agency did a phenomenal job at the exact wrong task.
They pumped more water.
Exactly. I like to think of it using a plumbing analogy. Imagine you have a pipe that carries water to a reservoir, and that pipe represents your business operations. The water is your cash flow.
Okay, I'm with you.
But your pipe has 6 massive holes drilled into it. Water is just spraying out everywhere. Wasted time, wasted materials, underpricing before it reaches the end.
And Mike's solution, the marketing solution, was to just hook up a bigger, much more expensive, high-pressure industrial pump to blast more water through the pipe.
Right. And yes, technically, a little more water eventually reached the reservoir at the end, but mostly he just made a massively bigger, more expensive mess on the floor.
So true.
The fundamental rule of business survival, the rule you have to burn into your brain is this. You cannot grow your way out of a profit problem.
You absolutely must fix the profit problem first, plug the holes in the pipe, and then you turn on the marketing pump to grow.
Exactly. Then you scale.
Okay, so we've diagnosed the illness. The pipe has holes. We need to plug them. We need to fix the operations.
Yes, we do.
But the second I say the word operations, I can literally feel people zoning out.
Oh, instantly. Eyes glaze over.
You hear operations, and it sounds like a boring, sterile boardroom word. It sounds like something that requires a fancy MBA, a clipboard, and a team of expensive consultants in gray suits walking around with stopwatches.
Which is so far from the truth.
Right. A guy running 4 HVAC vans or a fleet of 3 landscaping trucks doesn't think he has the time or the pedigree for operations.
And the ad is a huge misconception. It's a mental block that keeps small business owners trapped in the grind. Let's demystify that word right now.
Please do.
Operations is just plain everyday language for the way we do things around here. That is all it is.
The way we do things around here. I like that.
Exactly. It is the documented, repeatable way your team handles a ringing phone. It is the exact sequence of steps your technicians take when they pull into a driveway. Do they knock on the door first, or do they immediately start unloading equipment?
Right, the actual process.
Yes. It is how you price a job, how you send an invoice, how you follow up on an unpaid bill. People hear highly technical concepts like Lean methodology, or Six Sigma, and they immediately think that's only for giant manufacturing plants like Toyota.
Right, it sounds very corporate.
But let's strip that jargon away. Lean methodology is simply the practice of looking at a process and asking, does this step actually add value to the customer?
Give me an example of that in the field.
Sure. If your guys spend 45 minutes every morning rummaging through a messy shop looking for a specific PVC fitting before they can drive to the job site, that is wasted time. The customer isn't paying for that.
Right.
A lean approach just means organizing the truck so every fitting has a specific bin, meaning they load up in 5 minutes instead of 45.
That's brilliant.
And Six Sigma, that's just a fancy term for reducing errors. If your crew forgets to pack the right saw blades for a job once a week and has to drive all the way back to the shop, that's an error.
And it costs you money.
Exactly. Six Sigma just means creating a mandatory pre-departure checklist to ensure the error never happens. These principles apply perfectly to a 10-person service shop.
So operations is simply the stuff that runs the business, whether the owner is standing there watching or not.
Exactly. If the business completely breaks, the second you turn your back or go on vacation, you do not have operations. You just have an exhausting, incredibly high-paying job.
Man, I love that definition. The way we do things around here. It makes it accessible. It means anyone can fix it. So how do we systematically fix the way we do things? This brings us to the core framework we need to talk about today.
Right. We are going to introduce what we call the 7 profit levers.
7 levers.
Inside every single service business, regardless of your industry, there are 7 specific areas, 7 levers, where money is either rapidly multiplying or quietly leaking out.
And the tragedy is that most owners only ever look at or track one of them.
Leads.
Yep. Leads. How many people called us today?
Returning to our medical analogy, that is exactly like a doctor who brings you into the exam room, checks your heart rate, writes it down, and then completely ignores your blood pressure.
Right, doesn't even look at it.
They refuse to look at your cholesterol.
Yeah.
They don't listen to your lungs. And then they pat you on the back and say, you're perfectly healthy, go run a marathon.
It's totally negligent.
It is. If you are only tracking leads, you are ignoring the vital signs that actually dictate whether your business will survive the marathon.
So to make this real for you, the listener, we are going to set up a running example. We're going to build a hypothetical business right here, right now, and walk it through these 7 levers.
I love doing this. Let's build it.
Okay, let's picture a solid baseline service business, maybe a mid-sized plumbing outfit or an electrical contractor. Let's say they are doing exactly $500,000 a year in top-line revenue.
A very common baseline.
Yep. And they're netting about $50,000 in profit. So they have a standard 10% profit margin. They are surviving, they are paying the bills, but they certainly aren't getting rich.
Right.
We are going to go through all 7 levers, and we are going to see what happens when we improve each lever by just 10%.
And I want to emphasize that. We aren't going to double anything. We aren't aiming for a massive 50% or 100% overnight revolution. Just a tiny, highly achievable 10% marginal improvement in the way we do things around here.
And before we dive into the first lever, I want to drop the thesis on the math, because this is the concept that changes lives. This is the aha moment.
Weigh it out.
If you only focus on marketing, a 10% increase in your leads will generally create about a 10% increase in your top line growth. It is simple, linear addition, but a 10% improvement systematically applied across all 7 of these operational levers creates a 94% increase in total revenue.
Wow.
And a staggering 156% increase in net profit.
And why is that? Because these levers do not operate in a vacuum. They do not simply add together, they multiply against each other. It is compounding interest for your daily operations.
Okay, let's get into the weeds. Let's start with lever 1. And naturally, we have to start where everyone else starts, leads.
Right.
Lever 1 is how many potential customers actually find you.
At its core, leads represent the sheer volume of human beings who are ringing your phone, submitting a contact form on your website, or sending you a direct message asking for a quote. It is the raw, unfiltered volume of potential opportunity entering your business ecosystem.
And we know exactly why owners overfixate here. We talked about it earlier. It's visible.
Highly visible.
It is a massive ego boost to have a phone ringing off the hook. It feels like you are winning. It is exactly what every marketing agency in the world sells, and throwing money at ads feels wonderfully proactive when you are stressed out about payroll.
It is the ultimate dopamine hit of business ownership. Every time the phone rings, it feels like money in the bank.
So true.
So looking at our baseline $500,000 business, let's say they're currently getting 50 leads a month, 50 phone calls or form fills.
Okay, 50 leads.
To get our 10% improvement, we just need to move that from 50 calls to 55 calls a month. We just need 5 extra people.
Which is very doable.
Extremely doable.
Mm-hmm.
Maybe we tweak the Google business profile so the pictures look more professional. Maybe we optimize the website just a tiny bit or ask a few past clients for Google reviews.
But here's the terrifying part, and this is where the multiplication connection begins. Those 5 extra leads, those 55 total calls, they mean absolutely nothing. They're completely worthless. If the person answering the phone in your office sounds like a robot reading from a phone book.
Or worse, doesn't answer at all.
Exactly. You just paid for the privilege of annoying 55 people. That's where the second multiplier comes in. Conversion.
Lever 2 is conversion. Stripping away the jargon, conversion is the art of turning a ringing phone into a booked, paying job on your schedule. It is the exact percentage of leads that actually cross the finish line, agree to your terms, and hand you their credit card.
So why do owners systematically ignore this one? Because I talk to guys all the time who swear up and down their conversion rate is 90%.
All the time.
They'll lean across the table and say, oh, if I get them on the phone, I close them. My guys are great. We close everyone we talk to.
And they say that because they suffer from massive confirmation bias.
Really? How so?
They remember the great conversations. They remember the easy layups, the people who called already holding their credit card, ready to buy because a neighbor referred them.
Ah, I see.
What they completely ignore, and what they almost never have a system to track, is the massive volume of leads that silently leak out through poor operational follow-up.
The silent leaks.
Right. They don't track the voicemails that were left at 4:55 p.m. on a Friday and weren't returned until Tuesday morning, by which time the customer had already hired someone else.
Yeah.
They don't track the person who said, let me talk to my spouse and call you back, and was never entered into a system to receive a follow-up call. They don't track the times the dispatcher was rude or rushed or sounded totally disinterested.
They are losing half their calls to operational friction, but they pretend their conversion rate is flawless.
Exactly.
Let's give a real-world example of how to fix this operationally, because it's not about being a slimy salesperson. It's about having a system.
Walk us through one.
Think about a standard plumbing company. The phone rings. The customer says, my kitchen sink is draining slowly.
Okay.
The untrained dispatcher, who is just acting as a fast food order taker, says, okay, we charge $150 to snake a drain. Our guy can be there Tuesday.
And what does the customer do?
The customer, who is purely shopping on price at this point, because you haven't given them any other metric to judge you by, says, I'll call around, thanks. Click. Lost lead.
Yep. Happens 1,000 times a day.
Now let's implement a simple operational script. Same scenario. Customer says, my sink is draining slowly.
Right.
The dispatcher, who has actually been trained in conversion, says, I'm so sorry you're dealing with that. It's incredibly frustrating to not be able to use your own kitchen.
Empathy right out of the gate.
Exactly. Then they say, we can absolutely get one of our expert technicians out there to take care of that for you. And right now, for all our drain clearing calls, our technicians are also doing a complimentary whole home plumbing inspection while they are there.
Oh, that's good.
They'll check your water heater, check your pipe pressure, and make sure there aren't any hidden leaks in the basement waiting to cause water damage. Does Tuesday morning work to get that resolved for you?
What's fascinating here is the profound psychological shift in that second scenario.
Right. It's totally different.
You didn't just sell a drain snake. You sold empathy, and you sold peace of mind. You established immense authority and massive value before you ever even discussed the price.
And that is an operational system.
Yeah.
That script is the way we do things around here, and it directly impacts conversion.
So in our $500,000 business example, let's say their baseline conversion rate was 25%. They were closing 1 out of every 4 callers.
Okay.
A 10% improvement does not mean jumping from 25% to 35%. That would be a massive leap.
Right. We're talking relative improvement.
A 10% relative improvement means moving from a 25% close rate to just a 27.5% close rate. Out of 100 calls, you're just finding a way to successfully book 2 or 3 more people than you used to.
Just 2 or 3 more people out of 100. It sounds like nothing. But remember the multiplication connection.
Here it comes.
We already improved our leads by 10%, so now we are closing 27.5% of our new higher volume of 55 leads. The math is starting to compound,
It is.
but getting them on the schedule is only half the battle. Once your guy is actually standing in their kitchen or standing on their lawn, you have a completely different math problem to solve. And that brings us to lever 3, transaction size.
Lever 3, transaction size. Simply put, this is your average ticket. When the job is completely done and you hand them the final invoice, what is the bottom line dollar amount on that piece of paper?
And the reason owners ignore this lever, the reason they stubbornly, almost violently refuse to touch it, comes down to one deeply emotional word: fear.
It is absolute paralyzing fear. I see businesses whose pricing hasn't changed in 3, sometimes 4 years.
Meanwhile, the cost of fuel has gone up 30%, the cost of raw materials has skyrocketed, labor rates are through the roof.
The owner is terrified that if they raise their prices by even $50, their entire customer base will suddenly abandon them and go to the cheaper guy down the street.
They are completely ignoring what their level of expertise, their reliability, and their quality of work is actually worth in the current market.
Absolutely.
Wait, I have to jump in here with some genuine skepticism, because if I'm listening to this right now, I'm thinking, in this economy, if I raise my plumbing rates by 10% right now, my customers are going straight to Google to find someone cheaper.
Right.
How do you justify that without losing the base?
That's the exact pushback I get every single time. And the answer is that you don't always have to just arbitrarily hike your base rates to increase transaction size.
You don't.
No, you can increase the value you deliver while you are already on site.
Yeah.
Let's tie this back to our real-world plumber example. Let's go back to that whole home inspection script the dispatcher used.
Okay, I'm tracking.
The plumber goes out to snake the slow drain. He does a great job. The sink works perfectly. Then, exactly as promised, he does the whole home inspection. He takes 10 minutes to check the basement.
Just looking around.
He comes back upstairs and says, "Mrs. Smith, the drain is totally clear. But while I was down here checking your water heater, like we promised, I noticed the anode rod is completely corroded and your supply lines are showing heavy calcification.
Oh, wow.
If we don't swap those out soon, you're looking at a flooded basement in the next 6 months.
Yeah.
Now, I already have the parts in my truck. You can take care of it right now for $400, and you won't have to pay another dispatch fee for me to come back later."
That is brilliant operations. The plumber inherently raises the transaction size without needing to acquire a single new customer and without acting like a sleazy salesman.
Exactly. He maximized the value of the massive, expensive truck already being parked in the driveway. He provided genuine protective value to the homeowner. He's literally saving her from a flooded basement. And he turned a $150 service call into a $550 invoice.
So back to our math. Our 500K baseline business has an average job size of $2,000. If we improve that by just 10%, whether through a slight inflation-matching price increase or through operationally training our technicians to cross-sell additional necessary services, our new average job size is $2,200.
Let's recap what this means for the multiplication effect so far. We now have 55 leads a month. We are converting them at 27.5%. And every time we convert one, they're spending $2,200 instead of $2,000.
The revenue is actively compounding.
But getting them to spend $2,200 once is great. Getting them to do it again and again is where generational fortunes are made. Let's look at lever 4, frequency.
Lever 4 is frequency. In practical terms, frequency is getting the exact same customer to buy from you more than once in a given year. How often are they coming back to the well?
And why do owners ignore frequency? Because of the addiction to the new.
Oh, yeah. The hunter mentality.
Exactly. Small business owners are practically conditioned by our culture to act like hunters. They wake up wanting to kill something new every single day. They treat every single transaction as a one-night stand.
You do the job, you collect the check, you shake their hand, and you drive away forever.
Instantly looking for the next stranger to sell to, they should be treating their customer base like a marriage, nurturing the relationship so the customer comes back to them for every single need they ever have in that category.
If we connect this to the bigger picture, the actual financial cost of acquiring a brand new customer is exponentially higher than the cost of simply re-engaging an existing one.
So much higher.
You've already paid the Google tax to acquire them once. Why pay it again for someone else? Let's look at a real-world example outside of home services to really illustrate this. Think about a chiropractor.
Okay, chiropractor.
A patient comes in with severe lower back pain. The chiropractor does an adjustment. The patient feels great, pays the bill, and leaves. In a standard, purely transactional business, that's the end of the story.
The chiropractor just waits and hopes the patient hurts their back again someday.
Exactly. But a chiropractor who understands operations and frequency implements an automated 90-day reactivation sequence.
And this doesn't require a massive enterprise IT department to set up. It's an operational system. You can do it in a basic CRM or even with a well-organized spreadsheet.
So how does it work?
If a patient hasn't been scanned into the building in exactly 90 days, the software automatically triggers a personalized text or email. Hey, it's been about 3 months since your last adjustment. Usually around this time, the spinal alignment starts to slip back into old habits, especially if you're sitting at a desk all day.
Which everyone is.
Right. We have an opening on Thursday at 4 p.m. to get you tuned up so you don't lose all the progress we made. Want me to grab that slot for you?
It's so unbelievably simple, but it's completely transformative for the business. Suddenly, that one-off reactive visit for acute pain becomes a proactive, preventative, long-term care plan.
And you didn't have to run a single Facebook ad to get that appointment. You didn't have to discount your services. You just had an operational system that nudged them to return.
So, applying that to our baseline math, let's say our 500K business has an annual frequency of exactly 2 times a year. The average customer buys twice.
A 10% improvement means moving that frequency to 2.2 times a year. You are just finding a systematic way to get a tiny fraction of your audience to buy a third time.
But here is the critical pivot in our multiplication connection. Frequency drives up your top-line revenue beautifully. The cash register is ringing more often.
True.
But all that revenue, all those extra visits and bigger tickets, they don't mean a thing. They might actually destroy you if your business is bleeding cash on the back end while you fulfill the work.
Which brings us to the absolute undeniable anchor of business health. Lever 5. Margins.
Lever 5, margins. And specifically, we are talking about gross margin. It is the actual tangible money left over from that $2,200 invoice after you have paid for the physical materials and the direct labor required to do the job.
It is the money that is left to pay your overhead, keep the lights on, and actually line your own pockets.
Why do owners ignore it? Because looking at margins requires doing math they aren't comfortable with, and it requires facing hard, uncomfortable truths about their own management skills.
Yeah, those service business owners manage their finances by logging into their mobile banking app while sitting in the truck.
Staring at their phone.
Exactly. Looking at the checking account balance and saying, okay, there's $30,000 in there. We can make payroll. We're good.
They don't look at a profit and loss statement. They don't do job costing. Because of that, they have absolutely no idea which of their services are actually making them wealthy and which services are quietly, maliciously bleeding them dry.
Okay, here's where it gets really interesting. Because when people hear improve your margin, their immediate thought is, okay, I just need to jack up my prices even higher or buy cheaper garbage materials. Isn't margin just a pricing game?
It is a pricing game, certainly, but equally, if not more importantly, it is an operational efficiency game. Margin is about systematically finding and stopping the things that aren't working. It's about conducting a rigorous time and materials audit.
Give us an example of that.
Let's say you own a landscaping company and you offer both weekly lawn mowing and custom patio installations. You look at your checking account and there's money, so you assume both divisions are great.
Makes sense on the surface.
But if you actually ran the numbers, if you audited the operation, you might find a terrifying reality. You might discover that your patio installations are generating a 60% gross margin. They are incredibly profitable.
Okay, so the patios are a gold mine.
But then you look at the mowing division. You track the windshield time between houses. You track the time spent loading and unloading the trailers. You track the massive maintenance costs on the mowers and the fuel.
And what do you find?
Suddenly, you realize that $50 lawn actually costs you $55 in fully burdened labor and overhead. The mowing division is actually running at a negative 5% margin.
Wow.
Every single time your crew mows a lawn, you are literally paying the customer for the privilege of doing the work. This is the invisible bleed.
So improving margin isn't just charging more for the mowing. Sometimes it's having the operational courage to look at the data and say, we don't mow lawns anymore.
Exactly. We are completely shutting down the unprofitable division, selling the mowers, and reallocating all those labor hours and resources to the highly profitable patios.
Precisely. It is operational subtraction for the sake of financial addition. So for our 500K baseline business, let's say they have a gross margin of 40%.
Okay, keeping 40 cents on the dollar.
Right. After labor and materials, they keep 40 cents of every dollar to run the rest of the business. A 10% improvement means streamlining routes, negotiating better material costs with vendors by buying in bulk, or cutting an unprofitable service entirely to move that gross margin from 40% to 44%.
And the multiplication connection here is profound because you are now keeping significantly more money per job, which gives you the massive cash flow and the financial stability to invest in keeping those highly profitable customers around for the long haul.
Which brings us to lever 6, retention.
Lever 6 is retention. Simply stated, this is stopping the revolving door. It is the ultimate metric of customer loyalty. How many of the customers who bought from you this calendar year will actively choose to come back and buy from you next year?
And why do owners ignore retention? Honestly, arrogance. It is pure blind arrogance.
That's a strong word.
It's true, though. I have heard this verbatim from 100 different owners. Look, we do good work. We're the best in town. Our guys are clean. We show up on time. We don't need to chase people. If they need us again, they know our number, they'll call us.
Yeah, I've heard that exact speech.
That arrogance assumes that the customer owes you their unwavering loyalty just because you did what they paid you to do. But out in the real world, out in the highly competitive marketplace, your competitor is relentlessly marketing to your past customers.
They are sending mailers, they're running targeted ads. If you are silent, your competitor is absolutely going to steal them.
Let's look at an operational way to fix this without sounding desperate. Let's go back to the landscaper.
Okay.
A typical, highly reactive landscaper finishes the fall cleanup, plows snow if they're lucky, and then sits in that terrifying Michigan February we talked about, just hoping, praying that their customers from last summer remember to call them when the grass gets long in April.
Sitting in the gap.
Right. A landscaper who understands operations builds a seasonal retention system. In November, before the snow even falls, they send out next year's summer maintenance contract to every single existing client.
Just a simple email.
The email says, hey, we are locking in our routes for next spring right now. Because you are a loyal, preferred client, if you sign next year's agreement and put down a small deposit by December 15th, we will lock you in at this year's pricing and guarantee your spot on the route.
That is massive. The impact of that operational move is astronomical.
It changes everything.
Not only do you get a massive influx of signed contracts and cash deposits in the dead of winter, providing incredible cash flow when you need it most, but you literally book next year's revenue before the snow melts.
You de-risk the spring. You are actively retaining the client instead of passively hoping they return.
This raises an important question, though. Just how valuable is a retained customer?
The data on this is spectacular. Research from Bain & Company shows that a mere 5% increase in customer retention can boost your overall profits by anywhere from 25% to 95%.
95%, just from a 5% bump in retention.
Think about that math. Keep just 5% more of your people from leaving, and you could nearly double your profit. Why? Because retained customers buy more frequently, they accept higher transaction sizes without haggling, and they cost exactly $0 in marketing to acquire.
So let's plug that into our baseline business. Our 500K shop currently has a 75% retention rate. They are bleeding out a quarter of their base every single year.
Right. A 10% relative improvement means implementing a communication system, like that November email, that bumps that retention rate from 75% to just 82.5%.
And that leads us to the final piece of the puzzle. Because happy, retained customers who are buying more frequently at higher margins are the exact same people who fuel the most powerful, most lucrative growth engine in existence.
Lever 7.
Referrals.
Lever 7, referrals. Stripping it down, this is getting your existing, thrilled customers to do your marketing for you. It is turning your client base into an unpaid, highly enthusiastic volunteer sales force.
And why do owners ignore it? Because they leave it entirely, 100% to chance. They view word of mouth as this magical, organic weather system that they can't control.
They hope for it, they pray for it, they expect it, but they have absolutely zero systems in place to actually ask for it, facilitate it, or incentivize it.
Hope is not a strategy. We say it all the time. If you want referrals, you have to engineer them. You have to build it into the operational workflow.
Give me an example.
Think about it. You finish a massive, expensive bathroom remodel. The client is thrilled. She is practically in tears because the tile looks so beautiful.
Yeah.
That is the moment of peak emotional resonance. Not a week later. Not a month later via an automated email. Right then and there.
Strike while the iron is hot. Exactly. An operational system dictates that the project manager says, Sarah, I am so glad you love it. We loved working with you. Honestly, you are exactly the kind of client we want more of.
Oh, that's a great script.
We are looking for 3 more clients exactly like you this quarter. Who do you know in your neighborhood who is talking about upgrading their kitchen or bath? If you introduce us and we do the project, we'll send you a $500 gift card to that steakhouse you mentioned you love.
You systemize the ask. It's not pushy, it's professional. So for our 500K business, let's say their baseline referral rate is exactly 10%. 1 out of 10 customers brings in a friend.
A 10% improvement means bumping that from 10% to just 11%. Out of 100 customers, you are operationally asking for and securing exactly 1 additional successful referral.
That's it. 1 more referral out of 100.
And with that, we have successfully, rigorously walked through all 7 profit levers.
Okay, this is the moment of truth, the grand reveal. I want to bring you all the way back to the beginning of this conversation. We started with a baseline, average service business.
The 500K business.
Right. They were doing $500,000 in revenue and making about $50,000 in profit. The owner was probably stressed, staring at the ceiling, wondering if they should hire a marketing agency to blast more leads into the pipe.
And instead,
We went into the guts of the business. We improved leads, conversion, transaction size, frequency, margins, retention, and referrals by just 10% each. Tiny, incremental, totally manageable, systemic improvements.
didn't double anything. We didn't spend an extra dime on a massive new marketing campaign.
What is the final compounding result of that multiplication? I want you to walk us through the math.
The numbers are staggering when you let them compound. By improving each of those 7 levers by just 10%, that $500,000 business grows its revenue to approximately $970,000.
Let that sink in, almost $1 million.
Almost $1 million in top-line revenue. But here is the most important number, the number that actually changes your life, the net profit.
Kit me.
The profit doesn't just double along with the revenue. Because of the compounding efficiencies, especially the vital improvements in margin and retention, that $50,000 profit balloons to approximately $128,000.
Oh, wow. I really want you to stop and visualize that.
Oh.
It is the exact same business. It is the exact same owner. You are in the same geographic market. You are offering the same fundamental service.
You did not reinvent the wheel.
You just got 10% smarter across the board. You tightened the bolts on the machine, and you went from taking home $50K a year to nearly $130K. It completely changes the life of the owner. You can send your kids to college on that. You can actually take a vacation.
This isn't just a neat mathematical trick we're playing on this deep dive. This is backed by serious, heavy-hitting economic research. McKinsey & Company did an extensive global study on small business productivity and growth strategies.
And what did they find?
What they found validates this entire framework from top to bottom. McKinsey's research showed that companies that choose to invest primarily in operational efficiency, fixing the systems, plugging the leaks, training the dispatchers, auditing the margins, see profit improvements that are 3 to 5 times greater than companies that invest only in top-line revenue growth.
Let me repeat that, because it is the antidote to the marketing mirage. 3 to 5 times greater profit improvements by fixing the inside of the business rather than just buying more leads on the outside.
You have to fix the foundation before you try to build the second floor. The whole house comes down.
It makes me think of Mike from our earlier story. If Mike had applied this framework, if he had focused on his 7 levers instead of paying $22,000 to an agency to blow up his broken systems, he could have been working less and making dramatically more.
Exactly. My father was a very practical man, and he taught me a guiding philosophy that has shaped my entire approach to business advisory. He used to say, all because you can doesn't mean you should.
That is incredibly profound when applied to business growth.
It is. Just because you can buy more leads doesn't mean you should. Just because you can take on that terrible low-margin job across town just to keep your guys busy doesn't mean you should.
Growth, true, sustainable, profitable growth, isn't about just doing more. It is about doing the right things with incredible precision and having the sheer discipline to stop doing what doesn't work.
The ultimate irony I see in my consulting work every single day is that the best-run service businesses, the ones that are incredibly profitable and resilient, They aren't actually the busiest ones.
No.
No. They aren't the ones with the owner running around like a headless chicken at 8 p.m. on a Friday.
Yeah.
They're the ones where everything is systemized, the owner works fewer hours, the stress is low, and they take home significantly more money.
Which brings us to a litmus test for you. We've talked a lot of theory today. We've done a lot of compounding math. I want to challenge you, listening to this right now. Think about those 7 levers we just meticulously walked through.
Leads, conversion, transaction size, frequency, margins, retention, referrals.
How many of those 7 levers can you answer with an actual hard number? Right now, if I put you on the spot, not a gut feeling, well, I think it's around, an actual verifiable number from your data.
It's a sobering exercise.
Yeah.
Because if you are being dead honest with yourself and you scored a 3 or below on that test, meaning you only really know your leads, maybe your average job size, and vaguely your margin, then I can tell you definitively, without even looking at your P&L, you absolutely do not have a marketing problem.
What do they have?
What you have is a massive visibility problem inside your own business. You are flying a plane completely blindfolded through a mountain range, and you cannot fix what you cannot see.
It's the ultimate irony of business ownership, isn't it? We all take this massive, terrifying risk. We leverage our homes, we sacrifice our weekends, we miss our kids' baseball
We
games.
give up a lot.
We build these service businesses because we want to buy our freedom. We want financial freedom and time freedom. But because we ignore the operations, because we get addicted to the quick dopamine hit of marketing and the vanity of a ringing phone, we end up meticulously building our own cages.
That's a powerful way to put it.
We build incredibly demanding jobs we can't quit rather than assets that serve us. But we can change that. It just requires turning our attention inward instead of always looking out the window past that gray Michigan snow, hoping a stranger will call to save us.
So true.
Here's the challenge. Pick one lever, just one, the one you know the least about in your own business. Spend this week finding the actual number, not a guess, the real number. If that exercise alone changes how you see your business, imagine what happens when you measure all 7. Ryan Hurst does this diagnostic for free with service business owners. 517-955-21554 or mediaadvisors.com.